Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. So today we are going to be talking about how we beat soil contamination with Mushroom Mycelium and Vermicompost. We're also going to be putting together a green stock grow tower today. One that we have, it's going to be the same one as this guy here. This is a gray leaf green stock, and I'm going to be showing you how to amend the soil with those two products while building this green stock. Now, the soil that we have is not contaminated as far as we know, and we have been using the product, and as you can see, we've had growth, and so far these are beans, so they will let us know very, very quickly if we do have soil contamination in here. But to help potentially counteract any of those effects, I'm going to be showing you what I have been doing with these two products. Now, Mushroom Mycelium, we've talked a little bit about vermicompost, but I'm going to talk a little bit about both today. So Mushroom Mycelium, which is what I have here, in combination with the vermicompost, has been a major game changer for us. Now, this is a Rainbow Mix Pro Grow. It is 863, and that's going to be your basic, nitrogen, phosphorus, and then was it potassium or calcium, can't remember which, but it is a combination of those nutrient ingredients, which is good. But Mushroom Mycelium is also basically a probiotic for the soil. So what it does is, when you have soil contamination, the first thing that happens is the nutrients get stripped. So when the nutrients get stripped, that means that all the natural microbes, worms, things that are in the soil in there have really nothing to work with. And as they're dying along with that microbiome, because all the nutrients are gone, then you end up with a soil that is what they call hydrophobic. So it's dry, powdery, doesn't retain any kind of liquid, doesn't hold any nutrients, so nothing's going to grow in it. Frustrating? Anybody? Yeah. So it's just sort of this slow decline process in the soil, and it's really not pretty to... I'm sorry, my dog's growling at me. It's really not enjoyable to watch. But this adds in that microbiome, probiotic, prebiotic structure, and gives the soil what it needs to continue to thrive. Let's go grab our other item. Okay, so next item, obviously, vermicompost or worm castings. Love me some worm poop. Oh, let me tell you, if you have not started a worm farm, you need to start a worm farm. I'm going to be after you guys about this, especially if you are a small space grower. Start a worm farm. You will not regret it. It takes a minute a day. We're talking 7 minutes out of your entire week to manage a worm farm. It's amazing. I'll do another video on that. But in the meantime, let's talk a little bit about worm castings. Now, worms are basically naturally occurring in most soils. If you go out and dig in your yard, you are probably going to end up turning up worms. You remember being like 10 years old and doing that in your parents' front yard? Yeah. So you're going to find earthworms. Now, the typical worm that is used to create what you could call the worm casting product tends to be red wrigglers, because they are a worm that is easy to acclimate into new environments, which comes in handy when you are creating or building a worm farm. And then the other reason is they have a really high turnover rate when it comes to converting raw material into worm castings and worm compost. Okay, now worm compost is wonderful to work with, especially if you're a beginner, because it is a slow fertilizer that you won't potentially damage your plant with. There are some fertilizers that are put together and are a stronger, and I don't necessarily mean that worm castings aren't strong in nutrients here. I'll kind of try and explain this, but they are stronger in that the type of compost that has been used is what is defined as a hot compost. So there's cold compost and then there's hot compost. And that's going to be referencing the material in your mix. So say this wasn't worm castings and this was just a general mix. Companies will put together a variety of things. You'll see everything from peat and cow manure, which cow manure is hot, so that can burn root systems. If it's not broken down long enough, it has to be broken down at least for 9 months. So what you're purchasing this year, if you're purchasing that kind of a compost, is from at least 9 months ago, if not more. Could be closer to 1.5 years just for safety reasons, because they don't want to destroy your plants any more than you want them to destroy your plants. So it's not good for them to harm your plants, it's not good for you for them to harm your plants. Okay, symbiotic relationship between you and your soil supplier. Now there are other manures, alpaca manure, rabbit manure. Both of those are considered a cold manure, so you can literally take the poop or manure and directly put it on your plants. Whereas, say if I had chickens produce a hot manure. If I took their castings, their manure, and put it on one of my tomato plants, my tomato plant is going to die in about 3 days. Because it's hot and it's burned the roots, because it has not had time to break down and calm down. Okay, so worm castings, vermicompost, falls into the cold manure category. And more than just being a cold manure, the amount of nutrients that is in worm castings is very, very high. However, because this is a naturally occurring substance in soil, so all that they did when they, I don't know, let me get my scissors here. I'm going to show it to you. I want you to see like the texture of it, so you can see what I'm saying. When these suppliers have separated out the worm castings, because they separate the worm castings from the compost that's made in the bins, and what you get is kind of this very, see how granular that is? Not like a soil in texture at all, right? Okay, so that's what that looks like. Now let's go over here and I'm going to show you what a compost texture looks like. I have to go over to the potting bench. But when they separate it out, and there's nothing wrong with separating it out. Do you see how light and fluffy that is? You see, hopefully you can see the difference here. Okay, so when they are separating out the worm castings, there is now worm castings and then they have compost. So you can take the compost and use it like you would that compost. So that's actually what we are planning on doing, is separating out the worm tea, the worm castings, and the compost, and using all three in different ways here. So when you're getting these worm castings, you are literally mixing in almost this very, very tiny pellet structure into your soil, the way that you would be mixing in a regular fertilizer that you would get from a big box store, which you can get this from big box stores even. Since the worm castings come from a soil-like structure, okay, it's not, ooh, this might get noisy. Hold on, bear with me. Urban living, guys, urban homesteading. These are all the guys that think I'm crazy because they think I'm out here talking to myself. Just saying. Okay, we're in the clear. So, where was I? Oh yes, okay. So, worm castings obviously come from the natural soil and the natural compost. Basically, if you had soil that was completely untouched by man without any of the problems that are going on, you would see a healthy soil that is rich in nutrients and very much alive. You would have a very active microbiome. You would have a very active worm population. And this would be in that soil, okay? So that would be mixed in with the worm compost and the worm tea, all in the exact same location. Now, why is this considered awesome? As I said, it is a cold manure, but more than that, the way that it releases in the soil is, I want to call it a more natural way of releasing in the soil. So instead of putting something that basically, think of it like coffee. Let's think of it like coffee. That's a good example. So coffee versus tea, okay? Coffee will give you a huge hit really, really quick of energy, but definitely starts to taper off and you're going to need another cup 2 hours later, right? Right. Tea goes more like this and holds you for longer than coffee does, so you don't need a cup of tea until later in the afternoon instead of 2 hours later. Okay, think of worm castings along those lines. Worm castings is more like tea in that it gives you a more steady release of nutrients instead of a high peak of nutrients, and then in a month we're definitely going to have to do some major compost nutrient addition here. That being said, I am not saying with the green stalks to not fertilize weekly, because with green stalks, any type of container, you do need to fertilize more. However, worm castings help exponentially, especially if you accidentally miss a week where you haven't gotten to fertilize, life just got busy, you were on vacation, whatever the case may be. Worm castings in that scenario will save your bacon. Just saying. All right, so now that I've talked a little bit too much about our mushroom mycelium and our vermicompost for amending soil, I'm going to go on ahead and I'm going to put you on hyperlapse for now and start to show you how we are going to mix these guys in to each individual tier of our green stalk so that we can have some optimal growth for our fall garden. All right, let's get started. All right, so at this point, I want to show you what I am going to be doing for each of the green stalk tiers here. Now, we have begun developing our own potting mix. It's just more economical for the scale that we are at right now, and I can also, I guess you could say, control the ingredients that are in my potting mix. So what we are doing here is I am basically dividing this depth of this tier into 3. So whatever scale you're doing this on, potting mix wise, what you want to remember is 1 part peat, 2 parts compost manure blend. Okay, so once again, 1 part peat, 2 parts compost and manure. So I just divided this container here, tier, into 3. So I've got 1/3 down there, all peat. And yes, I use peat. I know there's a lot of controversy around that, but the company has sustainable agricultural practices in regards to their peat. They don't overharvest. So I trust their judgment. Like that or lump it. Take a pick. Okay, so that's going to be 1 part compost to 1 part peat. And I'm just taking my handy dandy little hory here, and I'm mixing. You can use your hands here too, if you prefer. So you can get your hands in there. There's nothing wrong with that. Help lower your blood pressure, heart rate. Having your hands in soil is very good for your health. They have proved that scientifically. Just like that. And then break up, of course, any clumps that you see going along the way. Okay. So I'm going to add 1 more part compost here. And I find mixing as I go easier. You could just fill the whole thing up if you wanted to and then mix it, but I'm trying not to be too messy here in this situation. Okay. Almost. I'm going to kind of give it a light toss. When you're planting in containers, you want a little bit more lightness, and that's what the peat gives here. And that also helps hold on to water. And that's what you really need in a container. You don't want a container that's gonna lose water too quickly, because that will cause other problems. All right, now let's add in our worm castings and then our mycelium. So worm castings, I'm going to show you what I do. I take this about like that, okay, and either using hands or a hory. Sorry guys, it's a Friday, everybody's out. Okay. Hori will get you a little bit deeper into the peat, which is good. No. All right. So that was probably a shy cup. I'm being generous. You want to make sure that these guys are full of nutrients. Now for the rainbow mix, I'm going to go a little bit less. So, I'm going to say about a tablespoon. Yeah, that's about a tablespoon. Okay. We're going to toss this in, and all of these companies give you ratios. So if you're working on a larger scale than this obvious tier here, and you're amending a larger area, which you will have seen me do previously. Obviously, I need more coffee or tea or something. Oh, it's beautiful, guys. This is turning out beautifully. Okay. So they give you the ratios on the back of the bag on how much to use. So make sure to read the directions. This is just what I had figured out prior for this surface and soil quantity, I guess you could say. And when it comes to the vermicompost or the worm castings, yeah, there's really, you really can't accidentally add too much of it. You're not going to hurt anything if you do add more than I did. I probably didn't necessarily need a cup in here, but I wanted to make sure, since I'm going to be putting seeds directly in here, this is going to have a bunch of leaf lettuce for fall. So I wanted to make sure there were a lot of nutrients in here to give them a really good start. All right, so that's it. That's exactly how you put this together. Whew. Okay, so super simple, not hard, very easy to do, and definitely more economical, because this is a 40-pound bag of compost, and this is Garden Magic is the company for the compost and manure. That's what we use, that's what we like. We've had great results with it when we've gone to other soils. That's when we've had contamination issues and deep-seated regrets. So we've just started making our own mix with this and peat for all of our green stalks, because this is what's working for us. Do what works for you, but this is what is working for us currently. Not a hard thing. So I'm going to go on ahead and I'm going to finish setting up this green stalk here. And I'm going to put you on hyperlapse, but I will sign off on the video right here. So guys, as always, keep it simple, natural, and essential. I will see you on the next one. Don't forget to subscribe, like, comment, and share. Helps us out, and it's free for you to do. Okay? So just click the button down below. Okay? Simple, easy, quick. See you on the next one.